On the other side of the treehouse door, when I was around 9 years old, my parents built me and my twin brother a treehouse. We lived in a very rural town in Washington state, on 5 acres of land. The house and lawns took up about 2 acres of land, and the other 3 were woods. The treehouse sat in the middle of these woods that was hidden away from the trails inside the woods. It was a basic treehouse, nothing too fancy, but to my brother and I, it was the coolest thing in the world. We always wanted to sleep in the treehouse, but because it was in thick woods, quite a ways from the house, my parents said no. But when we were 11 years old, they finally said yes after we kept begging them. My brother and I gathered up some comic books, DSs, flashlights and sleeping bags and headed out to the treehouse after dinner. Washington summer evenings are pretty comfortable, so we weren't too worried about getting cold and was more focused on having fun in the treehouse than anything. We set up our bags in there and began playing Pokemon on out DSs and having a good time. As it was getting darker, we switched on our flashlights and read our comic books. The treehouse door had 2 latches to keep the door shut when it got windy, one latch on the outside and one on the inside. As we got into our bags, I latched the door shut so that it didn't blow open in the middle of the night. I don't remember what time it was, but I woke up to the sound of crunching on the ground below us. I sat up and listened to my surroundings, making sure I wasn't hearing things. I kept hearing the crunching below the treehouse. I woke my brother up and whispered that I hear crunching. He reached for his flashlight, but I stopped him. We sat in the pitch dark, listening. It seemed that the noise had stopped. He whispered back that it was probably coyotes and that we are fine. Not 30 seconds later, we hear the ladder to the treehouse creak with the weight of someone climbing up. Then the door tried to be pushed open, but luckily the latch was set, and the door stayed closed. A huge thud came from the other side of the door, along sounds of cracking wood. We stayed quite too scared to make a sound. The next sound we heard was a thump on the ground, sounding like someone jumping off the last bit of the ladder and footsteps walking away. After what felt like hours, but was probably minutes, we got the courage to bolt back to the house. Leaving everything but the DSs, even though we were scared out of our minds, we both wanted to make sure our DSs were safe, especially since I had finally caught Palkia, and my brother caught Dialga. We made it back to the house in 2 minutes, running the fastest we have ever ran before. The walk to the treehouse takes about 5 minutes from the back door, so the run back in 2 minutes was impressive for us. We grabbed the key under the pot and opened the back door, locking it behind us. We both went into our room finally feeling safe. We didn't want to tell our parents what had happened because we didn't want Mum to say, "I told you so," and not allow us back out there. The next week, as we were in the post office with our mum, our neighbour, who lived down the road from us, walked in. As my mum and the neighbour got to talking, he told her that last week he found a very thin, greasy, dishevelled man in his shed. My neighbour's dog had apparently seen the man go into the shed and was barking at the shed. When my neighbour went to go check it out, he found the man in there, holding a rusty old knife. Luckily, my neighbour had brought out his hunting rifle to check it out, and the man dropped the knife. The cops were called and the man was taken away. I believe that the dishevelled man was what was on the other side of the treehouse door, looking for a place to probably sleep that summer night. After that incident, we didn't play at the treehouse as much and only went into those woods when it was light out, and we always took a knife with us from that point on. Next story, I received photos of me from an unknown number. I don't remember being tortured. I woke up this morning with a dull ache at the nape of my neck, a strange tingling that felt unwelcome, as though it was reminding me of something I couldn't quite grasp. When I reached for my phone, the screen lit up with a barrage of notifications, texts, missed calls, all of which I ignored at first, hoping that whatever mood I was in would pass in the comforting haze of morning coffee. But then a particular text caught my eye. It was from an unknown number. I opened it, expecting something innocuous, maybe a spam message or an accidental text from a wrong number. Instead, my breath caught in my throat at the chilling image that greeted me. The first picture showed me tied to an old rusty chair in what appeared to be a dimly lit basement. My eyes were wide with terror, an expression I had never seen on my own face before. I was covered in bruises and scratches, bound by thick, fraying ropes, and there was a flicker of light from an overhead bulb that barely illuminated the horror of the scene. My heart raced, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I scrolled to the next image, my hands trembling. This one depicted me lying on the floor, my wrists red and raw, as if I had fought to escape. A metal fixture loomed nearby, and the glint of a sharp blade reflected in the weak light. There was something sinister about it, an unspoken understanding that something grotesque had transpired here, an event I could not recall. The next image was even worse. I was in a corner, my body slumped and bruised, blood smeared across my forehead. I just couldn't remember. I stared at my own face, twisted in pain, grappling with an unspeakable dread. The images kept coming, me in various positions of distress, confusion, etched into the contours of my features, my clothes torn and stained. An icy grip of fear wrapped around my chest. I couldn't recall a single moment captured in those photos. What had happened to me? Who had done this? And why had I been forgotten by my own memories? As I delved deeper into the series of grotesque photographs, I felt myself spiraling. I rushed to my reflection, hoping, just hoping that it was a trick of the light, that I'd simply walked into some bizarre, twisted art project. But there I was, my face gaunt and weary, shadows under my eyes echoing a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. With shaking hands, I texted back the unknown number, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you? What is this?" The reply came swiftly, the words chilling in their calmness. "You don't remember, do you? Just wait, more will come." Panic spread through me like wildfire as I contemplated running. But what if it was too late? I scoured my mind for memories, for clues, anything to guide me through this nightmare. The images played over and over, each one a shard of glass cutting through my sanity. I called the police, but as I explained my situation, I was met with skepticism. "Without any evidence, sir?" "We need more than just a few pictures. It could be a prank." "Prank!" I almost screamed, but I could hear the doubt in my own voice, see the disbelief in the officer's eyes. They would think I was crazy, losing my grip on reality. Frustrated, I slammed the phone down and returned to my living room, my mind racing. What had I done to deserve this? What had happened during the lost time? It wasn't until the next day that I received another message. This time it was a video. My heart raced as I hesitated to press play. The moment I did, the memories swept over me in a flood. Screams, shouts, laughter twisted into something dark and taunting. I was back in that basement, but this time I was not tied up. I was the one with the blade in my hand. The truth crashed over me with unforgiving force. I saw my own face twisted in the throes of madness, my hands stained with betrayal and blood. They had been my own people, friends I had trusted. The images were not just torture. They were the aftermath of a chaos I had instigated. I staggered back against the wall, panic threatening to swallow me whole. Memories rolled in like a tide, and with them the understanding of who I really was, a monster, hidden beneath a mask of normality. I had buried the truth deep, believing I could escape the web I had spun, but now, feeling the weight of my past, the torment I had caused, I was faced with a choice. I could sink back into oblivion, deny it all, or I could confront the darkness that had led to those images, those horrors I had inflicted not only on them but on myself. I took a deep breath, shaking as I sat down to type once more. "Stop sending me these. I remember now. If I can't escape my past, at least let me confront it." As I hit send, I realized this was only the beginning. The reckoning would come, and I could either run or face the repercussions of my actions. But the choice was finally mine to make. Next story. I found a folder on my phone I didn't create, and it knows too much about me. A few nights ago, I was scrolling through my phone before bed. Nothing unusual, just the usual doom scrolling, when I noticed a folder on my home screen labelled Memories. I didn't remember creating it, but I figured maybe it was a system update or something. Curious, I opened it. Inside were videos and photos I'd never seen before. Some were normal, clips of me at family gatherings or hanging out with friends. But here's the thing, I don't remember anyone recording these. They're all shot from angles I can't explain, like someone was watching from a distance. The weirdest one? A video of me sleeping in my room. It's shot from the foot of my bed. I live alone. At first I thought maybe it was a prank or some glitch. I deleted the folder and set up my phone with extra security, but the next morning it was back. This time the folder was named Moments. Inside were more files, pictures of me at work, videos of me walking to my car. One image made my blood run cold. It was a selfie of me. Only I wasn't holding the phone. I was staring blankly at the camera with a weird, empty expression. I stayed up all night trying to figure this out. I checked my phone's logs, ran antivirus scans, even reset it entirely. Nothing helped. Last night, I decided to leave my phone in another room while I slept, just to be safe. Around 3 a.m, I woke up to a faint buzz. It was my phone. But I'd left it on silent. The buzzing wasn't a notification. It was coming from inside the room. When I turned on the light, my phone was sitting on my nightstand, unlocked. The screen displayed a new video, queued up, but not yet played. My hands shook as I hit play. It was a live feed of me sitting there, watching the video. I threw the phone across the room, but the feed stayed on until I yanked the battery out. Today I got a text from an unknown number. Why did you break the connection? Don't you like our moments? Next story. This house does not have an attic. This house does not have an attic, my father used to say. I waited beneath my bed for the sounds to go away. I could hear the walls talk all night and all day. Ever since I'd had my 11th birthday. No matter the hour, I'd hear them up in the loft, their screeches loud, quiet, hard and soft. I'd hear them say, "Please help me. Please find me. I am lost. Please come and find me, no matter the cost." But for months, their pleas fell on deaf ears. Soon those months had turned to years. I grew accustomed to them and said, I am just being dramatic, because at the end of the day, my house had no attic. My father was a man of dignity and respect. If I brought up an attic, he would always object. "There is nothing you are hearing, Ashley, you are incorrect." But I still heard the voices as they cried and as they wept. My mother was understanding. She'd always hear me out. She'd try to understand despite her doubt. I really don't think I'd have made it throughout if her motherly love I was left without. Some voices were kind, but some were cruel. Some showed mercy, and some were brutal. I stopped listening. I was not erratic. I knew the house I lived in had no attic. One day, for myself, I decided to go. After so long of wondering, I just had to know. What was up in the roof, what we were below. So I searched through the halls, steps quiet and slow. I reached up at the ceiling and grabbed a small little latch. To a big trapdoor the handle was attached. I looked over the scars, a stain and a scratch. When I tugged and I pulled, down came the hatch. When I pulled myself up, I saw quite a sight. There really was an attic. I knew I'd been right. My feet clicked softly as I walked across the floor. I had the odd feeling that I'd been there before. I was grabbed. She tugged, she ripped, and I tasted blood. I was stabbed. I was in pain. I was in this creature's domain. Fallen for her trap I had, and I began to panic. But no one ever found my corpse, for my house had no attic. Next story. I was staring at my own face on a missing person poster. Except I wasn't missing. I was staring at my own face on a missing person poster. Except I wasn't missing. I was right there, looking at it. It started last Tuesday. I was leaving work late, the city streets quieter than usual. As I passed by a lamppost, something caught my eye. A missing person poster. My heart stopped when I saw the picture. It was me. The name, the details, everything matched. The date on the poster said I'd been missing for 2 days. I ripped it down, thinking it was some cruel joke. As I hurried home, I found more of them. Every few blocks there I was, staring back at myself. I called my best friend, Mark, to ask if he'd seen the posters. He sounded confused, said he hadn't seen me for days and was about to report me missing. I got home and locked the door, my mind racing. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but stopped when I saw the voicemail. It was from my mum, sounding frantic, saying she hoped I was safe and asking me to call her back. I dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, assuring her I was fine. That night I barely slept. I kept hearing noises outside, like footsteps and whispers. The next morning I decided to go to the police station. On my way I saw more posters. This time people were looking at them, then at me, whispering. I felt their eyes follow me. When I reached the station, the officer at the desk looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. You're the guy from the posters," he stammered. I explained everything, but he seemed sceptical. He called my parents, but they didn't answer. He pulled up security footage from the street where I supposedly disappeared. The footage showed me walking down the street, then vanishing into thin air. They let me go, but told me to keep in touch. I went straight to Mark's place, hoping he'd believe me. When he opened the door, he looked like he'd seen a ghost, too. "What the hell, man? Where have you been?" He showed me the local news on his phone. There was a report about my disappearance with my picture plastered all over the screen. We spent hours talking, trying to figure out what was happening. As night fell, I decided to stay at Mark's. We locked all the doors and windows, paranoid that something was out there. Around 2 a.m. we heard a noise in the backyard. We looked out the window and saw someone standing there, watching the house. It was too dark to see their face, but their silhouette was unmistakable. It was me. Mark grabbed a bat and we ran outside, but by the time we got there, the figure was gone. The next morning, the posters had changed. They now read, "Found," with today's date, and my picture crossed out. I've been on the run ever since, trying to stay ahead of whatever this is. I don't know who or what is behind it, but they're out there, and they're coming for me. Next story. A Friend in the Woods, true story. A few years ago, I moved to a small, quiet town surrounded by dense woods. I had always enjoyed nature, so the idea of living near the forest was appealing. I spent most weekends exploring the trails, taking in the fresh air and enjoying the solitude. But one weekend I experienced something that still sends chills down my spine. It was late autumn, and the days were getting shorter. I decided to take a walk on a trail I hadn't explored yet. The path was narrow, winding deeper into the woods than I expected. The further I went, the quieter it became. There were no birds singing, no rustling leaves, just an eerie silence that felt unnatural. After about an hour of walking, I came across a small clearing. In the centre stood an old, dilapidated cabin. The windows were broken, and the wooden walls were covered in moss. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Curious, I approached the cabin. The door creaked open with a gentle push, revealing a dusty interior filled with old, rotting furniture. As I stepped inside, I noticed a strange smell, something earthy and metallic. I couldn't place it, but it made my stomach churn. Despite the smell, I continued to explore. The cabin was small, just one room with a table, a couple of chairs, and a bed covered in tattered blankets. On the table there was an old journal. The cover was worn and the pages were yellowed with age. I opened it to the first page and saw that it was a diary. The entries were written in a messy scrawl, recounting the life of someone who had lived in the cabin. The entries were mundane at first, talking about the weather, hunting, and daily chores. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone of the writing changed. The author started mentioning a friend who visited them in the woods. The entries became increasingly paranoid, with the author writing about hearing footsteps outside the cabin at night and seeing shadows moving between the trees. The last few entries were nearly illegible, written in a frantic hand. The final entry read, "The friend in the woods, he's not human. He's coming for me. If anyone finds this, stay away from the woods. He's watching." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I quickly closed the journal and left the cabin, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. As I stepped back outside, the silence of the woods felt oppressive. I hurried back to the trail, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me jump. I quickened my pace, my eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. They were slow, deliberate, matching my pace. I stopped and turned around, but there was nothing there. The footsteps stopped as well. I stood there, holding my breath, listening. After a few moments of silence, I started walking again, faster this time. The footsteps resumed, this time closer. Panic set in and I broke into a run. I could hear the footsteps behind me, now running as well. I didn't dare look back. I just ran as fast as I could, my lungs burning, my heart racing. The trail seemed longer than I remembered, and it felt like I would never make it out of the woods. Finally, I saw the trail, head in the distance. I sprinted towards it, the footsteps still behind me. As I burst out of the woods and onto the main road, the footsteps stopped. I turned around, gasping for breath, but there was nothing there, just the dark, silent woods. I never went back to that trail. In fact, I stopped hiking altogether. Whatever was in those woods, whatever that friend was, I didn't want to encounter it again. Even now, when I think back to that day, I can still hear those footsteps in the back of my mind, and I can't help but wonder if something followed me out of those woods, and if it's still watching. Next story. You ever get that feeling you're being watched? I live alone in a small house at the edge of town. Last night, around midnight, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I froze for a moment. The knocking came again, 3 slow, deliberate thuds. I checked the peephole, but no one was there. Thinking it might be kids pulling a prank, I ignored it and went back to watching TV. That's when I got a text. "Why won't you open the door?" My blood ran cold. The number was unknown. I didn't reply. Instead, I double-checked all the locks and grabbed the biggest knife I could find from the kitchen. A few minutes passed, and I heard something in the backyard, a faint scraping sound. My stomach sank. I slowly crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. There was a man standing in the middle of my yard, staring directly at my window. He was holding something long and sharp, a crowbar, I think. Before I could react, he grinned and raised his phone. A second later, I got another text. "I see you." I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They found the back door lock partially busted and footprints leading into the woods. I didn't sleep last night, and I don't think I'll sleep tonight either. Next story. I've always been good at hide and seek, especially when me and my sister were kids. She would never find me whilst playing the game. My stealth was always so good, and my parents would often lose me in shopping centre shops and supermarkets. Besides that, let's get into the story. Me and my sister, both 14, was left at home while my mum went shopping and was gone for 2 hours because we all know when mums go shopping they take forever. Anyways, while be at home I was watching Netflix while my sister was showering. Someone knocked at the door, but I didn't hear it straight away. I was half asleep from the chill atmosphere in my room. The knock became louder. This time I paused the show, thinking I heard a bang. Again the door knocked. This time I knew I wasn't hearing things. I walked downstairs and they were loud knocks usually whilst my mum's carrying shopping. She just knocks so she doesn't have to put down the bags. And who else that didn't live here apart from my mum knock on the door like that? So whilst I was walking, my sister shouted from the bathroom, "I think I heard the door knock." I responded with, "I know." And got to the door. I said, "Who was it?" No one answered. I thought to myself, that's weird, and turned on the outside light and looked through the peephole. No one was there. Phone in hand, I got a text on Snap. It was my friend who was like, "Who was that standing at your door knocking the door like feds?" I half swiped it as I thought they were lying. I was young and dumb. A couple hours passed. I wasn't watching anything because I was hearing the door for my mum because I was expecting her to come back at any second. I called her, asked where she was. She said she was at the checkout just paying, and I just said, "Okay, see you soon." My sister was up in her room doing her makeup and eyelashes. She was going out with her BF. Later that day I went downstairs to get a drink, and in the corner of my eye I saw someone walk past my house wearing black. I didn't think much of it. I was still in my kitchen, just on my phone, and we have a Ring doorbell. My mum and my sister have access to the footage on our phones, and curious, I checked it. With who I remember to be the person in all black standing at my door on the phone. I was like, what the hell, who is that? Again, I got a text on Snap, "Nah, seriously, me, who is that outside your door?" This time I opened it and said, "I know I saw who the fuck is that just standing there." Then the guy banged at the door. I dropped my phone, and my phone sounded the snap noise. I knew it was my friend whose house was directly across from mine. My sister shouted from her room, "Who the fuck is that at the door?" I was frozen, but managed to compose myself to pick up my phone and go in the sitting room and called my sister. She answered. Before she got the chance to say hello or what I said, "Call Mum, tell her to call the police." She said, "Why?" I told her to check the Ring doorbell app. She did. Whilst on the phone, she said, "Who is that? Imma call Mum, hold on." She cut off the phone. I checked it. The guy was booting at the door with a smile of his face. He looked weird, didn't look normal. His smile was so contorted. I was too scared to move. I felt I was paralysed. I knew it was fear. My sister came downstairs quietly, and as she did, a piece of the door broke. She ran to me. We have this storage closet in our hallway, and we hid. Put our phones on, do not disturb, and into our pockets. The guy shouted, "Let me in!" I was almost crying, and so was my sister. Then I held my breath in my mind. I was thinking, don't make a noise, you will die if you do. I was too scared to move, and I can tell my sister was as well. The guy kept on booting and banging on the door. He shouted, "Sarah, let me in." Who is Sarah? I thought to myself I was so confused and overwhelmed I just wanted my mum to come home. Bang! Me and my sister looked at each other as we both made it out to be the front door swinging open and smacking the wall while doing so. We heard him walking through the door and enter the kitchen. We heard a drawer open, and I already knew what drawer it was. The cutlery drawer with knives in it. At that point I thought to myself, that's it, we're going to die. I heard my mum on the phone from a distance. She got to the door and screamed and yelled, "Who are you? Get the fuck out of my house right now." The guy dropped the knife and ran out the door. My mum shouted to me and my sister as we busted out the storage closet and hugged her. Soon after, my mum called the police, and about an hour later 2 police officers arrived and got statements off of me and my petrified sister. The police asked me and my sister to get the footage from the Ring doorbell camera app and show it to them. After viewing it, they wrote down his description and took a picture and informed us they would keep us updated. About a week later, while me and my sister was getting ready for school, and my mum was in the kitchen washing up and watching TV on the fair-sized TV in our kitchen, then my mum switched channels. It was the news. Me and my sister was just about to leave, but I wanted a drink from the fridge first, and the reporter said, "A young woman aged 23 was stabbed last night on Worth Road." This caught my attention, and when they showed the murderer, it was the man I froze, and I was shocked. I can tell my mum and sister was too. I would never forget the way my mum came in at the right time, because if me and my sister didn't hide as quick as we did, I wouldn't be able to sit here and write this story today, and I'm forever grateful my stealth came into good causes that day. I will never forget it. Next story. I found a voice memo on my phone, recorded at 2 a.m. with my own voice whispering, "He's in the house. I live alone." I found a voice memo on my phone, recorded at 2 a.m. with my own voice whispering, "He's in the house. I live alone." It started a couple of months ago when I moved into a small, quiet apartment on the edge of the city. It was perfect for me. Affordable, cosy, and close to work. For the first few weeks, everything was great. Then, little things began to happen. It started with noises at night, scratching sounds like something was trying to get in. I dismissed it as the building settling or the neighbours, but then I started waking up feeling disoriented, as if I hadn't slept at all. even though my alarm showed I'd been in bed for 8 hours. One night, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. There was a voice memo notification, a new recording that I hadn't made. Confused and half asleep, I played it. My heart nearly stopped when I heard my own voice whispering, "He's in the house." Panic set in. I checked every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot, but there was no one there. I tried to convince myself I must have been sleep-talking, but it didn't explain the message itself or why it was so clear. Things escalated after that. Items in my apartment would be moved around, keys on the counter, chairs slightly out of place, lights left on that I was sure I'd turned off. I started feeling watched even during the day. I set up a camera in my bedroom, thinking maybe I could catch something on film. The next morning, there was a new recording on my phone and the camera was unplugged. The voice memo was the same as before. "He's in the house." I couldn't take it anymore. I showed the recordings to the building manager, hoping for some rational explanation or help. He paled and told me that the previous tenant, a young woman, had moved out after experiencing similar disturbances. She had left in the middle of the night, never to return. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the living room with all the lights on, clutching a kitchen knife. At around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed again. Another voice memo. I forced myself to listen to it, my voice trembling, saying, "He's in the room with you." I ran out of the apartment, not bothering to lock the door. I stayed with a friend and never went back except to collect my things during the day. I still don't know who or what was in that apartment with me. But sometimes late at night I check my phone, terrified I'll find another voice memo waiting.